been a little bit. Wait, pause. That's the wrong game. That's the wrong game over there. What I really meant to say was Deltarune, the highly anticipated, still ongoing parallel universe sequel to the acclaimed indie game Undertale. This game has been talked about on every single corner of the internet since it came out in 2018. Yeah, it's still going from 2018. I feel so old. From theories to rumors to content that we will never be able to play. Thank you, Toby. This game has already impacted not only the RPG space, but just gaming in general. Like I said, it's still going. With that being said, you may look at my channel name and say, Henry, I thought you loved music. Why are you talking about video games? Because in my opinion, arguably one of the most important aspects of Deltarune is its soundtrack, what you're listening to while you play the game. I've made one video in the entire history of this channel about video game music, and it didn't do very good. Now, to be fair, I was sick and I filmed it really late at night for some reason. Don't watch that video, it's not very good. But I am a nerd. I grew up on video games, I've played every Nintendo game you can probably think of, and Deltarune currently is one of my favorite games of all time. And there's so many parts of the soundtrack that you don't have to play the game to appreciate, or you don't have to even like video games to appreciate. It's just incredible music. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna talk about it, because why else would I? You gotta start catching on to these things. This video is gonna have two different sections. One is gonna talk about how the music was actually made, like how it was produced, composed, stuff like that. And the other will be talking about the emotional, story-based, and lore aspects of these songs. I also want to mention that this video is going to very heavily focus on chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune. This is for a few reasons. They're the newest chapters, and the other two chapters have been out for so long that the soundtracks have already been meticulously dissected. And while we're still gonna be incorporating elements from the earlier chapters into these two chapters, the main focus is on 3 and 4. So with that being said, my name is Henry, I love music. This is where I talk about it. So if you enjoy the video or you're interested in any of the other content, please subscribe, it helps a lot. I also interview artists. I have a handful of interviews up right now that you can go watch. I love interviewing artists, it's a passion of mine. Go watch them, it's really fun. But without further ado, Deltarune everybody. Let's talk about it. Before we talk about any of the music, you need to know and understand who created it.
Toby Fox, come on down.
Toby Fox. If you know and have played Undertale or Deltarune, you know who Toby Fox is, so I'm going to give a very brief introduction. Toby Fox is a game developer and composer. He shook the entire world with the release of Undertale, one of the most critically acclaimed indie games of all time. This was a game that tested the bounds of how meta storytelling can be and showed the player that your choices really can matter. But it was supplemented with an amazing soundtrack. Some of the songs on this soundtrack would go to amass insane numbers on streaming services, but surprisingly to everyone would just serve as a baseline of talent for what Toby was about to do in the future. And that was Deltarune, the follow-up project to Undertale. In the years that Deltarune has been releasing, Toby Fox has gone and produced music for other games like Pokemon, proving that he really is one of the most talented guys in this space. Deltarune was different. It had a larger team, a bigger budget, and more room for creativity. And that creativity shows itself really well in the technical aspects of this soundtrack. So let's talk about it. Toby Fox's DAW of choice is FL Studio because he is cool and awesome. And it also has access to a gigantic list of plugins and sound fonts that he uses for this soundtrack. If you're not huge on the technical production side of music, let me explain what plugins and sound fonts are really quick. For the sake of the video, plugins are like digital instruments. Majority of the time, these come in the form of synths that have a wide variety of sounds and are very, very customizable. Sound fonts are more of a collection of instruments and sounds that don't have as much customization, but have a very specific sound. It's a very dumbed down way of explaining those things. They're a lot more complicated, but for right now, that's what you need to know. But for now, let's talk about the plugins. An amazing spreadsheet created by a person named Storm catalogs every single plugin that Toby Fox used on the entirety of the Deltarune soundtrack. It's where I got a lot of the information for this video, so if you want to check it out, it's going to be linked in the description. What you're going to find is at the very baseline, Toby uses a lot of the same plugins from Undertale. He just likes to layer and add stuff onto it now. There's a really great video posted a few years ago recreating some of the songs from the Undertale soundtrack that explains the intricacies of the plugins I'm about to talk about. That video is really good. It'll be in the description as well. The NES VST plugin shows up a lot, especially on chapter 3. The sound that this synth gives is exactly what it sounds like, a very nostalgic 8-bit NES sounding sound. Chapter 3 of Deltarune has this really big emphasis on this Legend of Zelda style 8-bit game that you and Susie and Ralze play. Because of that, there's a big increase in strictly 8-bit music in this chapter. This plugin allows a lot more customization than some of the other 8-bit plugins around, and is used so heavily throughout this entire soundtrack. As we move on to sound fonts, the SGM sound font is used a lot on Deltarune as well. It contains a lot of instruments used on games like Earthbound and Animal Crossing, which have this very nostalgic, old retro feeling to them, but are more defined and real sounding than some of the 8-bit stuff. You'll see this sound font used on a lot of the more fleshed out songs on this soundtrack, like on a lot of the overworld or battle songs. But something really cool that I want to point out is that Toby uses a lot of stock FL Studio plugins for this soundtrack. The 3X OSC is a stock FL Studio synthesizer that Toby uses genuinely all the time. The song Black Knife is made almost entirely with just this and some other stock FL Studio plugins in the SGM sound font. And this, in my opinion, is one of the most technically crazy songs on this album, that it's just so crazy to think that this is all that it took to make it. So inspiring. If Toby Fox could do this with a bunch of stuff downloaded off the internet and stock FL Studio plugins, just imagine what you could do. A lot more than you think. However, in Chapter 4, it does get a bit more fancy sonically. You don't have to look at the plugins, you can just listen to the music to realize that there's a lot more going on in this part of the game than there was in earlier parts. There's a huge number of sample libraries, plugins, and instruments used in a lot of these songs. The area you explore in Chapter 4 is very old religious and regal. It's very big, which reflects itself in the music. Tons of different sample libraries and plugins are used to make this soundtrack sound very, very grandiose. But at its core, it's still Deltarune, it's still Toby Fox, and uses all of the same plugins and sound fonts that I talked about earlier. While this chapter is growing much bigger thematically and sonically, Toby is able to tie everything back in with its previous chapters using the sounds that we've heard throughout the game. As you play the game or listen to the soundtrack, you'll start to pick up on different details and melodies from other songs appearing in newer songs. This could either be using the exact same instruments, or maybe they're showing themselves in different forms. This is all very intentional, and to explain it, we need to segue to the other section of this video, the lore. I'm not going to explain the entire story of Deltarune in this video. That would take a lot longer than I want and is kind of unnecessary. But I will explain relevant details, characters, and storylines as they pertain to the tracks I'm about to talk about. To break the ice into the lore, we need to talk about an Undertale and Deltarune fans' favorite musical buzzword: the leitmotif. A leitmotif is a melody that reflects a person, place, or thing. It's like the noun of music. In media, these leitmotifs typically appear in tracks where the person, place, or thing is relevant. For example, say you're playing Pokemon and you're listening to a character's main theme. If it's an important character, their battle theme will usually have elements from that main theme. That's the character's leitmotif showing up in both of those tracks. Undertale absolutely spammed the leitmotif method when it came to storytelling. It's an amazing video by a creator named Salt where she actually physically connects every single leitmotif in Deltarune to each other on this like bulletin board. It's one of my favorite videos of the year. She explains it a lot more in depth than I'm about to. I will link it in the description. And this is 100% the case with Deltarune as well. We can also see leitmotifs in things like concept albums as well. Ethel Cain's album Willoughby Tucker I'll Always Love You, which I've talked about ad nauseum on this channel, is full of them. Whenever the tracks are about Willoughby, Willoughby has a very specific leitmotif that carries across the entire album. And similar to a concept album, Deltarune's soundtrack uses these leitmotifs to tie in really interesting things story-wise. For example, this is the freedom motif. This motif shows itself in the battles of the secret bosses of each chapter, where after the battle you're rewarded a shadow crystal. So not only are these enemies visually connected, they're connected sonically as well. However, this motif is absent from the theme Black Knife, the track that plays when you fight the Roaring Knight. The Roaring Knight is where you get the shadow crystal from in chapter 3, and while it may not be a secret boss, the way to get the shadow crystal is still definitely a secret. And even if you argued that Eram, the actual secret boss of chapter 3, is the real secret boss, the motif's not in there either, so sorry. This obviously brings up a lot of story questions, like if the knight is tied in with the other three at all. And this motif alone has spawned so many different theories across the internet. And again, that's all just storytelling through music. Now, arguably one of the most important leitmotifs in chapters 3 and 4 is the Lost Girl motif. This leitmotif is associated with the character Des Holiday, a member of the Holiday family that went missing, hence the lost girl. You get it. While this leitmotif shows itself before chapters 3 and 4, it was finally associated with Des in an ARG that came out shortly before chapter 3's release. The track can be played in chapter 3 when you input the code 1225 into the gacha machine, with 1225 being December 25th, but also just being a number that's been associated with December throughout this story. But the leitmotif can also be found in tracks that seem unrelated to this. At first glance, the song Raise Up Your Bat is just a funny bit in the game. It's a way to introduce the Guitar Hero minigame that shows itself in chapter 3 and is just supposed to be something lighthearted and fun. But the more you look into it, the more it starts seeming really weird. The name Raise Up Your Bat resembling what the knight uses in battle, to Ralze singing different lyrics than what's put on the screen. Coupling all these things together, you could make a very strong case that December is the Roaring Night, and that's simply off of the leitmotif that's been associated with the character and a few visual things. While only a handful are story relevant, there are a ton of leitmotifs in this game, and they are used so incredibly and so masterfully to tell the story without even needing any of the visuals. It's super incredible to look at the technical side of everything and see how these songs look deconstructed, and see them carry all these story relevant and lore parts of this game just in those parts. It's always been one of Toby's strengths, even while he was a one-man show. One of the things that elevated Undertale and elevated the other projects that he did was the incredible music supplementing it. And because these are indie games and don't have the multi-million, billion, trillion-dollar budget as these really large corporations do, is so important to the game and is so incredibly important in the success of this franchise. Being able to convey happiness, sadness, anger, and fear while also being able to create such a beautiful story is such a huge accomplishment when it comes to a soundtrack. The game is amazing, but even if you don't play games, I encourage you to listen to the soundtrack and just hear what I'm talking about, because it's amazing. Toby's amazing, and the people that have helped create all of this are amazing. It's awesome. That's where I'm gonna cap it off. This is the last video from a list of videos I made at the beginning of the year that I really wanted to make for myself, not for like any kind of trend or numbers or anything like that. And I'm really glad I got it out. I'm a huge Deltarune fan, if you can't tell, and it's just really cool that I got to do this. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I have a ton of videos that you would love on my channel right now. I'm gonna put some up on the screen for you. And stay tuned for the end of this year. My top songs and albums videos will be coming out in the last 2 weeks of the year, so please be ready for that. But without further ado, I will see you next week. Goodbye.